Welcome to Conscious Conversations, a place where East meets West, a place where conversations and ideas will challenge your minds, expand your consciousness, awaken your heart, and make you think more deeply about yourself and the world.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Conscious Conversations. I'm very excited for today's show. We're here, as always, with co-host Wes Gordon. How are you today, Wes?
Good, very good.
Good. Always wonderful to see you.
You too.
And a very big welcome to our special guest, Christopher Timms. It's wonderful to have you back. Thank you for coming again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, guys.
Yeah.
And it's great to talk to you. I know that we're both going to be at the big Ancient Healings Conference, so I'd like to give a shout out to our sponsors first. Because it is coming up this very weekend.
That's right.
July 10th and 11th at the Melbourne Auditorium. It's going to be 2 wonderful days of many speakers. I think they have over 24 speakers giving talks and workshops throughout the weekend. Many vendors. So if you haven't got your tickets or if you want to learn more, please go to ancienthealingsconference.com. Well, Christopher, again, thank you for being here. It's good to talk. You brought up an interesting topic today. So it was the role of ego in the Age of Aquarius. Now, there's so many ways that we could sort of go with this conversation.
That's true.
And one thing I guess we could presuppose and maybe clarify for some people that are watching and listening is maybe, are we saying that we're in the Age of Aquarius? Are we saying it's here? Are we saying it's coming? And maybe for those who are saying, well, what is this Age of Aquarius I'm always hearing about? What is it supposed to be all about? Because there's so many different ways that this is sort of sometimes described and sometimes even, you know, estimated on when it's supposed to be. I know just from like my own looking into the Age of Aquarius, it's been said it was here like back in the 1447 it started. Some say it started in like 1962. Some say it started in like or it was going to be starting in like the 24th century, and then like Rudolf Schreiner says like 3000.
Right.
So
right. Yeah. Thank you for all of that confusion. In that, yes, there are many different perspectives on the dawning of the Age of Aquarius.
Right.
And I look at, instead of trying to lay the big precessional cycle, the 26,000-year cycle, on a timetable trying to figure it out, look at the dynamics of the society as we've moved from the 1900s to World War II into the 20th century, you know, the 21st century now, all of it. And you can see symptoms. You can see expressions of a dynamic change. And as we moved into World War II, the horrors of World War II, it was the dawning of the nuclear age.
Right.
And it was also when the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, 1947, 1948, when the Gnostic texts, the Nag Hammadi Library was discovered. We had the Roswell incident happen. And then right around that same time, within the next year or so, you had the adjustment of the World Orchestral Congress changing the center tone for the musical scale from A432 to A440, and all of these are symbols. All these are symbols for things beginning to change at an energetic level.
Right. At
an energetic level. Now, symptomatically, as we proceed on through the late 40s, all of a sudden we shifted music and art. We went from a very beautiful, controlled form of music. You had all the big band music, you know, and all of that Glenn Miller and all that stuff, which was great. I played a lot of that kind of music on drums and stuff. It was cool. Gene Krupa, Buddy Rich, they were great, incredible people. But then we exploded. All of a sudden, you have this crazy guy who's evil, Elvis Presley, on stage swinging his hips, playing music, and, you know, pastors banned anybody from listening to any of that kind of evil music. Right. You have Buddy Holly, the Big Bopper, all this stuff happened. You have the explosion of rock and roll. Then you had the beginning of the British invasion.
Yep.
Everything happened. And then you have people wearing multicolored shirts, guys wearing their hair long, throwing out ties and jackets. No one's doing that normal stuff anymore.
Right. The peace and love.
And now, now instead of seeing the musicians on stage in suits and ties playing like this, you see Mick Jagger, you know, and you see Janis Joplin, and you have these crazy people on stage. You know, this is the signal of many things that are happening.
Right.
Change. This is the signal of change.
Well, isn't change inevitable, though, no matter what? Yes,
it is. And if we begin to look if we take the precessional cycle and instead of trying to put it into when did it start, when's it going to end, you know, when's the dawning of the age of Aquarius and the ending of the age of Pisces, if we move away from any of that and just look at the symptoms, we can see and say clearly that whatever happened, whatever the timetable is, something dramatically changed within this time period. People began to question government instead of just blindly trusting government, questioning religions and the teachings of their religions rather than just blindly accepting it. People questioning the ideas of masters, gurus, messiahs, all this stuff. Everything got thrown up in the air like a big salad because it's the ending of a cycle and the beginning of another cycle.
Right.
You know, and again, just looking at the symptoms, it's obvious that we're in this great catharsis.
Yes.
We're in this great catharsis. So, can we talk about the ego, the role of the ego in all of this?
Absolutely.
Because I think it's really crucial. The ego has been given a really bad bill of goods, okay, honestly, right? Now, if we didn't have egos, we would be a pile of amino acids laying on the floor.
Right.
You know, the ego in true esoteric terms is nothing more than your personality. It is the personality that makes Anthony, Wes, Christopher. It just defines the lens through which I'm looking into this ocean of limitless possibilities called life. So the ego, by that definition, is it a bad thing? No. Should it be beaten up and destroyed, pounded into the ground, transcended? No. No. The idea of ego is being able to fully embody who you are. And now this is the caveat. This is the clear teaching involved here for the Age of Aquarius, is to realize that you don't even really exist. The ego, the personality, is part of what's called Maya.
Right, the illusion of the world.
Yes, the illusion. We can call it the simulation.
Mm-hmm.
We can call it the matrix. It's the form, the software that you run as unlimited awareness. That's what you are. You are unlimited awareness.
Right.
Limitless possibilities taking a finite, limited form, as Wes, as Anthony, as Christopher, as any of us here. So to say you're going to get rid of your ego, the only part of you that could even get rid of the ego, because it's all operating within the matrix or the simulation, is the ego. So then the ego is still in control in all of your due humility and selflessness.
Yes.
Which you see everywhere.
Right.
That's one of the spiritual epidemics is what's called false humility. So the way I deal with that in my own life, because I love being me, just ask me, I'll tell you all about it, how much I love being me, right? is that I'm here to be the best me that I can be. I'm here to give the gifts to the world that only I can give to the world. That's sacred.
Right.
That's amazing stuff. That's wonderful stuff. And for me to not be afraid, not compromise, not hold myself back, for me to just be all of who I am each moment of each day, and yet realize that none of this really exists. That's the counterbalance, you see. That's the counterbalance. And it's not to be self-important. It's just the opposite of being self-important.
Right.
You know, it's like, it's not bragging if you can do it. You know, it's like, I build the best sound tables in the world. It's not bragging because I can do it.
Right.
But I realize that the sound tables don't exist either because it's all within the matrix.
But that would also be...
Does that make sense?
But that would also be saying that it's your opinion that you're building the greatest.
Of course it's my opinion.
So then your opinion is coming from a point of egoic perspective.
Of course.
Right, but from the Eastern traditions, they would say that, like, from yoga or even Buddhist philosophy, they would say that that needs to be diminished.
Of course,
the less there is of the ego, the closer I am to who I truly am, because the selfishness or that aspect does need to be decreased and destroyed.
Yes. That's part of the Dzogchen in Tibet, the teaching of the art of selfishness. We learn that each person is going to express this unique idea of self,
right,
and our own talents, our own abilities, our own the true pride, not false pride. It's not a righteousness, self-righteousness. It's taking pride in doing things really well. Each person is going to express that differently according to your software, according to your personality. And of course, the journey to diminish the idea of self-importance or boastfulness is really important.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a good point. But we do need to take a quick break here. But thank you all. We appreciate you staying tuned, because we're going to continue talking about the ego and its role in this age of Aquarius when we come back after these messages. Welcome back to Conscious Conversations. We're here having a conversation about the role of the ego in this age of Aquarius. And Wes, since you were sort of silent this first part of the show,
me?
Was your ego in check, or do you have any input or perspective on what your thoughts are?
The scriptures just kept coming up left and right that I must diminish and he must increase.
Right.
I must die daily.
Yes.
Most people don't understand the concept of what you're actually dying to. They think it's just the pleasures of life. I can't be happy and enjoy everything in general. But no, there's an energetic nature and characteristic about you that fights the spiritual part of you, at least from my perspective.
Right.
And that's where the war happens between the flesh and the spirit.
Right.
And it's real easy to get caught up in being boastful and prideful, thinking that you're being super spiritual, but it's actually coming from your spiritual ego.
Right.
And I've said that term to people about spiritual ego, and they just looked at me like, that's impossible. You can't have a spiritual ego. I got a big lecture on Facebook one day for posting something about that, but I see spiritual egos out there. And I understand, I think somewhat what Christopher's sharing is there's a part of you that has to realize that you're not, that the integral human part of me is not really important.
Right.
It's the invisible spiritual part of me that I've been given, domain over, and it's part of my divinity. That's what's really important. And it's not selfish. It's self-serving. It goes out and helps everyone, even at what you would call my human experience expense. And people don't want to do that because it's uncomfortable. Well, I think what some of us don't realize is you first have to get yourself nurtured up and get in that energy, so that you're not coming from lack when you try to help somebody. I see a lot of people out here that are supposedly Christians or spiritual, trying to help people, but they're coming from their ego, and they've also never built up the well in themselves to be able to actually fruitfully help another person. So they're kind of resenting, oh, I got to help another person that can't figure it out. Jeez.
Right.
You get what I'm saying, but that's my kind of take on the ego.
And they're helping people with the expectation of receiving reward,
yes,
a spiritual reward, like I've done good things, give me some more credits.
Right.
Kind of a thing.
Yep.
And
it doesn't work that way.
No, the warrior acts without expecting rewards.
Right.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, and also from the yogic perspective of Patanjali, the ego itself falls into asmita, which is one of the cliches or the obstacles that block us from seeing our true self.
Right.
So until that egoic selfishness, now see, the ego gets very complicated because people misunderstand the word. Many people from the West interpret the ego, and we've done a show on this, with Freud's understanding of ego. And they look at the ego from the Freudian perspective of the person, analytical interpretation of psychology and the personality and how complex it is. And the ego is important in psychology, because from Freud's definition, The ego that he's talking about is the rider on the horse of the id, which is his very famous metaphor. So the id is what's drawing us to these passions, our desires, our pleasures for sex and food and all this sort of stuff. And without the ego, we could be like on a runaway horse just going into horrible situations.
Right.
So the ego says, oh, but wait a minute. Might not be the wisest way to go. It looks at like the cause and response. If I do this, this might happen. So it might sway us to be more wiser in what we're just running after.
Right.
So from Freud's perspective, that aspect of ego is healthy. Then you have the superego, which is on top of that, super meaning above, not that it's your higher self, but in the fact that the superego is what's been conditioned by like the morals of society, what society would say is right and all that. So it guides you more towards moralistic. So if someone cuts you off in traffic, you know, you're not going and following, chasing him down when he gets out of his car, beating it, you know, beating him to a pulp. The superego is saying that society would say that was wrong.
Right.
So from a psychological perspective, that ego is necessary. But from a spiritual perspective, many of the traditions are talking about the part of you that is implicitly selfish, that just thinks about I, me, mine, that just is me, me, me. I'm the greatest. This is what I want. I don't care about what you want. More for me and the hell to you. That part, that ego, needs to be diminished.
Right. That's the losing of self-importance.
Right.
Not the diminishment of identity. Because the identity as the driver on the horse, and in the metaphor we could use, once that has lost its need to be boastful and self-important, then it becomes a constructive instrument to do all the practices and service and things that we want to do. And that's when you're no longer looking for rewards.
Right.
You're just doing the right thing because you're doing the right thing.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and you move into a different level of navigating the horse, driving the bus.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like you're both saying as well, too, you know, and sometimes in our life, you know, we think we're doing spiritual things, but it's still coming from an egoic level.
Right.
There was a story by I think it was Thomas Keating. I'm not sure if either of you were, but he wrote a lot on Christian contemplative prayer. And he was talking about a monk in one of the monasteries he was in, who before becoming a monk was always going out to bars. His challenge was to drink people under the table. I could drink the most and, you know, win bets and all this stuff. And then he realized his life was going in the wrong way. So he decided to become a monk. But then when he got into the monastery, instead of drinking people under the table, what it became is fasting the other monks under the table.
Right.
Who could fast? I can go the longest. Right. I can do this. And so it's not that he really changed. The ego just then substituted
Different behavior.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's epidemic across all of the spiritual religious sect.
Yeah.
You know, because people have missed that one key point, because it's not what you do, it's how you're doing it.
Yes. Yes.
It's how you're doing it. And
So the intention behind your action.
intention's the beginning. Because if I intend to go get the grass cut and it doesn't get cut, then it's not cut. Right? So tending means to tend inwardly. So if we cultivate that quality that we're looking to develop, and as we intend it to happen, then we have to demonstrate it. We have to express it out, which is, it's great to fast, but not if you're just trying to compete and be the world's best faster.
Right.
I mean, what's the point? Right.
Yeah. And many people of you all know out there that I'm a huge fan of Carl Jung, but his work was very interesting. He was a friend of Freud at the time, and then they split. But he said that the first part of our life should be on developing a healthy ego.
Right. That's right.
But then the second half of our life should be turning within ourselves and letting that ego go.
Right. The losing of self-importance again, the dying daily.
Yeah.
You know, that Paul talked about relentlessly. The die daily of the temporary self that you've worked all these years to develop and cultivate. And it's not to destroy it, to kill it. It's to not take it too seriously, to just unlearn it.
Right.
Don't let it be the unbridled master of your life.
Right.
There's another faculty, you know, at work here now as you begin to awaken.
Yeah.
And that second part of your life. Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up.
Cool. Well, I think we need to end our talk here, but it's been a really wonderful talk today. But I do want to give you time to talk and share a little bit about what you'll be sharing and doing at the Ancient Healings Conference this weekend.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm the plenary speaker, which means I'm opening the conference, which is great. I'll be teaching for an hour. And just to give everybody a heads up on it, the title of the talk is When the Masters Played Rock and Roll.
Oh.
So, and this will be PowerPoint, great sound system.
Yeah.
And so what if the great spiritual giants that lived with us in ancient times chose to incarnate at the dawning of this age, this time of great change, not as priests and politicians because people won't listen to them anymore, but what if they came as the musicians, the artists, the dancers, that sang and danced and painted, sculpted their ways into our hearts, planting seeds that would then awaken at the right time.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, it's going to be fun.
Yeah. Well, it really was fun. I mean, we were all there for the one they had 2 years ago, and it was a great time, and you did a wonderful talk, and were a wonderful keynote speaker and leader of the whole conference that time, too. So I'm really looking forward to joining you again this one.
Thank you.
Yeah. So for all of you out there, again, if you haven't heard of the Ancient Healings Conference, you can learn all about it at ancienthealingsconference.com. It is coming up this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, at the Melbourne Auditorium in Melbourne, Florida. And you can find tickets at the website and all the great speakers that will be there as well. So please look into it, and we hope to see you all there. We thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate you. We love you all. We thank you for all your time and attention in all of these talks. And please leave below in the comments anything you think about the ego or this Age of Aquarius. And we hope that you all have a very blessed and beautiful day.